A comment that I frequently get on my videos is that my pronunciation, both Japanese and English, is really good. Now, elephant in the room, I am white. I am not even slightly Japanese, either ethnically or culturally, but I do have a good ear. I have had different kinds of vocal training, so I do have an ear for listening to the sounds and language and really imitating them well. So with that, I wanted to make this quick little crash course in how to pronounce Japanese vowels properly. So there are many components to good Japanese pronunciation. One of them is the vowels, the other is the consonants, which is a lot easier than the vowels. That's a lot more straightforward. And then the third, which I'm not going to get into in this video, is intonation. So intonation is where your pitch rises and falls. For example, a lot of people think that the Japanese name Akiko is pronounced Akiko. Like they'll go Akiko, the key part is the stressed part, but that's not at all how it's supposed to be pronounced. It's more like Akiko. It's more like straight across with a little bit of a fall at the end. So Japanese vowels, they are actually quite simple and straightforward, but there's still a lot of ways that non-Japanese speakers mess up the vowels. So going over the basic 5, we have A, I, U, E, and O. Then you can combine these vowels to make what are called diphthongs. We have diphthongs in other languages other than Japanese, like the word eyebrow. Eyebrow. It's made by A, I, brow, U. We combine those vowels to make ai and brow. Same thing in Japanese. But for now, we are focusing on just the pure vowel sounds with no other vowel sounds added to form a diphthong. So the reason why I say that Japanese vowels are a lot simpler, at least a lot simpler than English vowels and a lot of other vowels in other languages, is they don't have like a bunch of different colors for the same vowel. For example, we have what is called a schwa vowel in English. Like my name, Sarah, it's not Sarah, like Japanese people would pronounce it. They go Sarah. It's like the same vowel twice, but actually in English, it's more like a sa, followed by an which is a schwa vowel. Okay, that's also way too complicated. Just keep it simple. Yeah, just the 5 vowels. So let's look at A first. You may look at the A vowel and think, oh, ah. But listen very closely. I'm going to demonstrate the difference between a bright vowel and a dark vowel. So this is ah. I'm saying the ah vowel both ways. I'm going to start off bright, and then I'm going to go to dark, and then I'm going to go back to bright again. So starting at bright. Ah. That was all an ah vowel, right? But at the bright end, it got kind of close to an ah, which we have in English, like ah. And then at the other end, at the dark end, it kind of went to an aw, like you're in awe about something, right? So that's the bright, dark scale of ah. Now, a English ah, at least like a TV English, which is the kind of English accent, not English accent, American accent. The kind of American accent I have is TV English, and it's kind of in the middle. It's not ah, it's not aw, it's ah. It's like a very neutral ah, neither bright nor dark. The Japanese ah, it's a little leaning towards bright. So listen to the difference. Ah versus ah. Ah, 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 ah. So if you can't hear the difference, just really try to be hyper aware moving forward in your life when you're listening. I find that Japanese songs are a really great way to listen to the way people pronounce vowels because they'll often hold out their vowel while they're singing a note. So just really be hyper aware now and listen. And you'll find that different speakers have different brightness in their vowels. And sometimes when people sing, like good singing technique, you tend to darken your vowels. So that's going to change things a little bit. But just try to learn how to recognize the difference between a bright vowel and a dark vowel, because recognizing the difference will already help you speak it better. So the Japanese ah is a little brighter than the American ah. Ah versus ah. So Japanese words that prominently use ah would be atatakai, that means warm. Banana is banana. Aratana, which is sort of a sophisticated way of saying new. Sailor Uranus and Neptune say it in their speech. Aratana jidai ni sasorete Sailor Uranus kurei ni katsuyaku. That speech. Aratana. That is also a very prominent a vowel word. Anata, the word for you, that's just all an a vowel, one after another. So these are a words. Now we will look at e. E is pretty straightforward, except that it is never I, like the dead vowel in American English, I, like his or symphony. The word symphony, for example, you got si, m, fa, ni. So the I versus E, it's more the E, not the I. So the brightness darkness scale for E, the E vowel would go like this. I'm going to start bright and I'm going to go dark. So E. So try to listen for that difference and know that American E is kind of here, whereas Japanese E is brighter over here. Examples of Japanese words using the E vowel are any kind of E adjective, basically, is a really good word to listen for E, like mabushii, utsukushii, subarashi, mimi, ears, hibi, days, hibiki, the girl's name, hibiki, or it also means like an echo. Nikibi, which is pimple. I had a lot of those on my chin recently. So there's some examples of E vowel, and the E vowel also, think of it as a little tighter, a little more E, like you have to kind of smile when you say it. When you say E in English, in American English, notice how I'm not really smiling as much, like E, Christmas Eve, Eve. But in Japanese, Eve, for Eve, it'd be E. You really have to smile more when you're saying the Japanese E versus the American E, because it's a little brighter, a little tighter. Imi, like the meaning of something. Imi, if I'm saying that in Japanese, I'm smiling, I'm kind of straining, it's very tight. Imi. But if I'm saying it with an American accent, it would be imi. Like I'm not smiling, I'm going imi. And there's more volume to it, there's more thickness to it. It's not so tight and thin and bright. Now we come on to the U vowel. This also, just generally speaking, Japanese vowels tend to be brighter than American English vowels. So in American English, we would say ooh, right? I'm really forming my lips ooh, and there's this thickness to my sound. So I'm going to do a brightness darkness scale for ooh. All right, over here we're going to be very bright, and over here we're going to be very dark. And for you throat singing enthusiasts, you'll notice that I kind of throat sang a little bit there. That's one of the techniques you use to throat sing. You start really bright and you kind of weave back and forth between you, and that creates overtones. If you heard like a whistle in my register while I was going from bright to dark, that's what was happening. I was making overtones. Side note. Anyway, so yeah, the American oo is like a little darker, and the Japanese oo it's kind of almost like oo umlaut for those of you who speak German. It's a little oo. It's a little shorter, a little brighter, and not as much resonance, not very thick. Utsukushi. Yeah, so one of the words I referenced earlier for my E example, utsukushi, beautiful, utsukushi. If I were to pronounce that with an American accent, it would be utsukushi. Notice how it's utsukushi, whereas Japanese it's utsukushi. Kurumi, walnut, kuru, the verb kuru. Notice that it's kuru, not kuru. Or kuru. It's really hard to mispronounce Japanese, by the way. So kuru versus kuru. I'm not like making my pitch itself necessarily higher, although it will sound higher because it's brighter. Those of you who are singers know what I'm talking about. But yeah, generally brighter. Utsuru, to reflect. So utsuru would be the Japanese u way of pronouncing it. Utsuru would be the American English way of pronouncing it. Utsuru versus utsuru. And incidentally, I'm trying not to change my pitch like I'm trying to not make my voice actually higher when I'm saying the Japanese examples, but this is another side effect of speaking brightly, of having brighter vowels. Your pitch, like where you speak, like I usually speak around an F, or an F sharp when I talk in English. But when I speak Japanese, I shift a little bit and I talk kind of more around an A probably. That happens. It just naturally happens when you're speaking Japanese because these vowels are brighter. It will make you speak in a higher register than what you're used to actually speaking in. So that's another side note. So now the Japanese vowel e. I'd say e is probably the easiest in terms of it's the closest to American e. However, I notice a very common mistake that most Americans make when they're pronouncing Japanese words is changing the pure e sound into the diphthong a. So for example, if I'm telling someone kite, like come here, they might say kite. Kite, kite. If you're American, you would say kite instead of kite. All right, so that's a very, very common mistake that I hear when Americans try to pronounce just a pure e, because we seldom have the pure e in our language at the end of a word. It's usually like in the middle of the word or at the beginning of a word. But if it's at the end of the word, we almost always diphthongize it. That's a word, diphthongize. So the Japanese e and the American e are almost alike. The American e is a little bit darker, but not by much. So I'm going to show you the dark light scale for e now. Over here we have bright, over here we have dark. So e. So just learn how to notice the difference between e and and know that American English e is kind of here, and then Japanese e is pretty close, but it's just a little brighter. E. So some Japanese words that use e, kare, and again, because the de part is at the end of the word, the American tendency would be to go kare instead of kare. So kare, keep it pure, do not add an e at the end and turn it into a diphthong. So kare for he or boyfriend, taberu for eat, ne for your eye, tsume for nails or claws, ame for rain, not ame, but ame, tenki for weather, etc. So last of all, we have the o vowel, and the Japanese o, it generally you kind of have to really work your lips and really form the shape with your mouth, and you also have to, it's also kind of tight, again, o versus o, it's not open and forward, it's more o, it's more kind of back in your mouth. If I'm trying to describe it as dark or light, it's kind of neither, really. I mean, I guess it's kind of bright and I guess it's also kind of dark. That made sense. It's really just think of it in the back of your throat versus forward. So American o, like that, and at the end I'm kind of closing it into an oo sound, o, versus Japanese o, it's very pure, it's just o. So in this case, the Japanese vowel is actually kind of darker than the American English vowel. So for our O scale, we got bright O over here and dark O over here. We've got O. Bright O is kind of like Keanu Reeves in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like, oh. Whoa. Or like a very California surfer dude, like, oh, I'm from California, so I do have a tendency to kind of go, oh, with my O's. That's a very California, West Coast kind of thing to do. But the Japanese O is O, O. Again, I'm kind of sitting up straight. I'm doing this, like I'm kind of leaning a little bit forward with my head. I'm really verticalizing my mouth when I go O, and I'm really raising O. I'm raising my soft palate. For singers, you'll know what I'm talking about, but your soft palate is behind your hard palate, which is right behind your teeth. If you kind of yawn, you'll feel it naturally raise. So you want to raise your soft palate and go O, and kind of do that lean forward thing, long lips going O, and you will pronounce O correctly. It takes a lot of work to pronounce Japanese O. So that's one of the tells when Americans try to speak Japanese. They'll just go O. It's not the correct vowel. So Japanese words that use O are oki, kokoro. That's your heart, your soul, or your mind. So the American way to pronounce that would be kokoro. I'm going to try to pronounce it incorrect vowels, but correct R. Kokoro. So the American English way of pronouncing that would be kokoro versus kokoro. So kokoro versus kokoro. Kokoro versus kokoro. The phrase read a book, hon o yomu versus hon no yomu. Hon o yomu. Otoko for man, otoko no ko for boy. So that's just all o. Sumomomomomo. That is a tongue twister. Sumomomomomo. It means that apricots are also peaches. That's a bad example because it's just a bunch of mo. But yeah, otoko no ko. That's just all o. Versus otoko no ko versus otoko no ko. Yeah, the Japanese o, you'll notice it's also shorter in general than the American o. So that was my little quick crash course in Japanese vowels and how to pronounce them. The main takeaway from this is really start listening more. Be aware of bright vowels versus dark vowels. Be aware that can sound different from speaker to speaker and from language to language, and really just keep your ears open and learn to listen for these differences. And as good as my ears are, of course my pronunciation is not perfect. It's not as good as a native Japanese speaker. So really listen to a lot of Japanese music by Japanese singers, watch anime, and actually listen when you're watching the anime. And just listen to Japanese speakers and start paying attention for these vowel sounds. If you want me to make more videos like this about pronouncing Japanese, let me know. And bye! Okay. Yeah, so vowels. Yeah, vowels. That's what this video is about. Just vowels. Not gonna make a 45-minute video that takes 10 hours to edit. What else has a lot of oohs in it? Geez, I should have come up with some examples before I started recording this video. So much great material for the blooper reel this time.